ایران میام و انگلیسی چپوتیل دانشجوام آذربایجان. Well, what I just said is I said hello, my name is Okhtay and I'm from Iran and the language I'm speaking is Azeri or Azerbaijani.
Okay, great. One of the interesting points about your language situation is that you speak two languages. You speak Azeri and Persian. Could you talk a little bit about how these languages are similar or different from each other?
There are some, first let me start with Persian, which is very similar in some aspects to English because it's an Indo-European language. So, for example, in some of the words are similar to English and the way the sentences are built are similar. But Azeri is a Turkic language, so it's closer to Turkish and other languages of Central Asia.
Could you talk about different dialects in these two languages? Are they pretty uniform or do they vary a lot from place to place?
Actually, Azerbaijan, the region Azerbaijan is not that big, but even from one town to the next, there are different dialects. And my father and mother are from two cities which are 3 hours apart, like 200 miles apart. And the dialect is completely different, and some words, there's some simple words like as simple as carrot or some forms of dishes have different names in these dialects. And for Persian it's the same, from one city to the next you have different dialects. So each region of Iran has its own specific dialect which is really unique for itself and can be distinguishable from the others.
All right. How do the different dialects of Azeri differ based on whether it's a dialect spoken in Azerbaijan or if it's a dialect spoken in Iran?
About 200 years ago, the region Azerbaijan was divided into two. So the northern part was part of Russia and the southern part stayed in Iran. And the northern part is now a republic, but it was influenced by 2 centuries. It was influenced by Russian language, and the southern part was influenced by Persian language. So in the last 200 years, all the new words which has arrived in the language for the northern part has been closer to Russian or Russian originated, and for the southern part it has been Persian. So as an example, a word like university, which is a modern aspect of our life, in the northern part they use the equivalent of Russian word, and the southern part we use the Persian word.
That's really interesting. Great. Could you talk a little bit about how the structures of Azeri and Persian are different? They don't quite form structures the same way. Could you give us some examples?
The Persian, in the Azeri, for example, the order of noun and adjectives are similar to English. The adjectives come before the noun, but the Persian is like French. The nouns come before the adjectives and adjectives follow them.
Okay, great. Could you tell us about verbs in your languages?
In both of them, verbs come at the end of sentence, but also in a lot of literature and poesy, for example, Persian, for example, it's kind of flexible. Verbs can come earlier in the sentence or even at the beginning, and then the rest of it follows.
Interesting. You mentioned earlier that in Persian, nouns and adjectives are in the same order as they are in French. Something else about French is that all nouns are either masculine or feminine, and even in English we make this difference between saying he if we're talking about a man or she if we're talking about a woman. Do either of your languages make these kinds of differences based on masculine or feminine?
No, none of these languages have any difference in any of the nouns or any of the verbs. They're neutral.
And so if you were referring to a person, you don't say he or she, they're just one word in common?
Yes. So you don't really know, when you're talking about someone, you don't really know whether it's a man or a woman, unless it's specifically mentioned in the sentence.
Interesting. Something else you mentioned earlier is that Azeri is a Turkic language. It's related to a language like Turkish. So would you be able to understand Turkish, or how are these?
They're very close. A lot of verbs, a lot of nouns have a similar meaning, or are the same but have slightly different meanings. So well, we can understand them easily, I think, the Turkish language speakers, but even for them, I think spending 1 month with us can make them easily understand us and speak our language.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Okhtay. I really enjoyed talking to you.